Welcome to CFF-TV. I'm your host, Matt Monero. The hot topic of the day should be, why am I drinking 42 ounces of Diet Coke this morning? But that's a whole other hot topic, I guess. Today's hot topic is how artificial intelligence is impacting the transportation industry. Look, this is a big deal. And, I'm a pretty simple guy. I have 2 pages of notes on artificial intelligence and how it's impacting the transportation industry. But the process of bringing you the hot topic today really freaked me out a little bit as I gain a much deeper understanding of what the 2 types of AI, artificial intelligence, actually are. So let's get into today's hot topic. Artificial intelligence is impacting the transportation industry in a big way. We don't hear about it all that much, but it's happening behind the scenes a lot, way more than us in transportation have given it credit. So let me give you my definition of what AI is. It's the use of computer programmings and deep learning, which we're going to get into in a minute, technology to create additional efficiencies. It's the use of computer programming and computers that actually learn to reduce friction in processes. Now, we need to understand that not all AIs are created equally. There are 2 primary as it exists today. The first is simple artificial intelligence programming. A good example would be Uber, in which an app was built, a program was programmed, and it simply is used to locate your position, dispatch a vehicle to your position, and take you to a new position. And it's done through computer programming. Another example of fairly basic AI would be Amazon. You purchase something on Amazon and miraculously it makes recommendations to you of other products that were similar or other things that you might want to bundle to go along with that because other people have bought this similar grouping connected to your purchase. That's a version of AI. But what really begins to freak me out is the deeper version of AI, which is referred to as deep learning. Now, let me give you an example of what deep learning means. Deep learning is using quantum computing programmed with learning technology to replace human thought with machines that learn and get better fast. That's the piece of AI that I believe we are in inning 1 of a 9-inning game. Now, with that said, as it relates to deep learning, let me give you 2 really fascinating data points that exist in this category of deep learning. Number 1 comes from our buddy Elon Musk over at Tesla. And Elon Musk says, even in its current form of AI, tests show that when AI is deployed in a Tesla, there is a 45% reduction in traffic accidents. He says it's version 1. They'll have version 2, 3, 4, and it will only get better, bigger, stronger, faster, more real. But the second example of deep learning is the one that really freaked me out when I was doing the research for today's hot topic. This is a quote from a gentleman named Lee Sodol. Just for reference, Lee Sodol is the world's greatest human player of the 3,000-year-old game called Go. And this quote came after his loss to the artificial intelligence deep learning program known as AlphaGo, which is built by Google's sister company called DeepMind. Lee Sodol decided to retire after he lost over and over and over and over at the game of Go to AlphaGo, in which he was the greatest human player of Go. Here's what he said. With the debut of AI in Go games, I've realized that I'm not at the top. Even if I become the number 1 player in the world through my frantic efforts, said Lee, there will always be an entity that will now beat me and cannot be defeated. The guy spent his whole life being the greatest Go player in the history of the planet, comes up against a machine learning computer built by Google's sister company DeepMind. He beats it at first, and then through deep learning, the computer learns from its mistakes, learns from his moves, and he was never able to beat it again, so he quit. That's the power of deep learning artificial intelligence. Let's take a look at the top industries that currently use AI: healthcare, agriculture, fashion, education, and manufacturing and logistics. These are the biggest users of AI right now, but it's all over the place. Here's how it's being used in transportation right now. Routing freight more efficiently and more profitability based on traffic and weather patterns. Computers are beginning to determine what routes the transportation is going to move on. It's also being used in the sorting of freight, both electronically and physically. Many of the Amazon warehouses right now are being fitted with robots that are literally identifying the order, going to where the order is in the warehouse, picking the product, bringing it back to shipping, getting it put in a box, which is then being put on a truck and being delivered to your house and my house. And AI is also being used in self-driving vehicles. There will be self-driving vehicles in our future. Period. End of story. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be a human operator in that vehicle. I do think that is the movement in trucking, in which a truck will be going from Dallas to Houston, one warehouse to another warehouse in a self-driving capacity. But similar to the airline and a plane, you will have a human operator. Look, planes take off, fly, and land electronically now. The pilots do have the ability to take full control. The pilot is in control of the plane. That's magical. I love it when I'm on a plane. But the reality is the planes do have the ability to fly themselves. I think that same concept of where there's a pilot manning the machine is the same thing that will happen in trucking. There will be a truck that will drive itself, but there will be a human driver managing it in case of problems. So let's take just a minute and do a quick pro and con of where we are in AI and transportation currently. Number one, the pro is that there is an incredible efficiency being gained in processes of transportation. Number two, there will be a reduction in human error because of computer learning. Number three, new jobs and new industries are being created and will continue to be created within transportation, because we're going to need people who man the computer systems, man the robots, program the robots, do the repair and maintenance on the robots, do the repair and maintenance on the computer systems. That will create the opportunity for new and more jobs. And let's not forget that AI, artificial intelligence, always requires a human element to build it. Right? AI doesn't operate just in a vacuum. Someone has to tell the computer what to do to start. Now, when you start adding deep learning into the quantum computing, that's where it gets a little hairy, because that computer does begin to learn and become its own entity. And that brings me to the cons. Number one, the cons of AI in transportation is it is going to reduce jobs. The consulting firm McKinsey recently suggested that by 2030, 375 million workers in transportation and logistics, that's about 14% of a global workforce, would need to switch occupational categories as machines become increasingly capable of doing the work reserved for humans. Number two, what happens if the AI fails? AI requires perfect programming, all kinds of sensors and markers, and a Wi-Fi connection so it all can read. What does that mean? Well, what does it mean if this stretch of the highway that the self-driving truck is driving on can't connect, the sensors fail, the markers aren't there for the sensors to sense? We got a big problem on our hands. And number three, what happens if AI and deep learning gets into the wrong hands? We're talking about it in a positive light, but what about the negative light? What if a country decides to use deep learning in a negative way? What could happen to the planet, to human existence in a way, if AI gets in the wrong hands? So the summary on today's hot topic about artificial intelligence and transportation, number one is AI is real, and AI is here to stay. So let's not put our head in the sand. Let's learn about it. Let's be aware of it. Let's see how it's impacting us today and in the future. And let us all agree that the world is going to look very different in the next 10 to 20 years for all of us. And AI and deep learning will be a major factor for it. We'll see y'all down the road.